Hey, what's up? What's going on? Welcome to English with Dane, a podcast designed to improve your English. As always, I'm your host, Dane, and you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at English with Dane. If you want transcripts for all future episodes of the podcast, go to englishwithdane.com/transcripts and sign up, apúntate, to the listener list. You'll receive transcripts as soon as each episode comes out. Also, if you want past transcripts, you can now get the transcript library with over 100 transcripts of the show so you can improve even faster. That's englishwithdane.com/transcripts. Today's episode is a special one because I am talking to my friend Sam, and we had a really interesting conversation about a bunch of different English learning related things. And we met recently, we hit it off, and I thought you guys would benefit a lot from talking to him. So without further ado, here's the conversation with Sam. What's up, man? How you doing?
Oh man, all good, all good.
Dude, so we met recently doing the roundtable for Rod, our friend Rod, the teacher. And that was interesting. And honestly, I wanted to have you on the podcast because you said some really interesting stuff. And I think we think differently. Not necessarily like we disagree, but we just like think differently about things. And I thought that was really interesting. So yeah, just thanks for doing this, dude. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate your invitation.
And also we spoke a little bit setting up this meeting, and we have a few things in common as well. Right. I mentioned I had a basketball game to go to, and you were like, oh man, I play basketball. I saw you playing guitar. I play guitar as well. And so I don't know. I thought that was pretty fun. When did you start playing? When did you start playing basketball?
Basketball. Well, I was 6 years old when I first started. So pretty young. Now I'm 22. So yeah, it was a long time ago.
Man, you're much younger than I thought you were.
Yeah. I'm a kid.
Yeah. So you're still at university, or what's your situation?
I graduated my bachelor degree. I have a bachelor degree, but I'm doing a master's degree at the University of Amsterdam.
Awesome. Master's in what?
Language, literature, and education. English track, of course.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. A love for the language, you gotta keep pushing.
That's awesome, dude. So you're Italian for those listeners who don't know. This is my friend Sam. He's Italian. He's an English teacher. He's really good at explaining stuff. I follow him on TikTok, on Instagram. It's worth it. First of all, why do you speak English so well? And when did you start like actually thinking to yourself, okay, I'm going to teach, this is something that I want to do. And what kind of got you into that?
Well, that's actually an interesting story that I like to tell people. Basically, I have a share property, a multi-property. I don't know how you call it in English. Mm-hmm. I think it's
like a timeshare. Yeah,
a timeshare, exactly. A timeshare in Malta, which is originally an English colony, right? Mm-hmm. British colony. So everybody speaks English there. And I was going to go there every year for 2 weeks, right? So I was struggling with understanding other people, and that got me a little bit upset. But at some point when I was about 14 years old, I met this British girl from London, which is much older than me. Considering I'm 22, she's like 40 something.
Oh, word.
So
okay.
There's a bit of an age gap, right? And we sat at the bingo table, and I was struggling with understanding the numbers because, of course, at school you learn English, yeah, but when it comes to British pronunciations or any kind of pronunciations that is more native oriented, then it's pretty hard to even understand the numbers, especially, 30 and 40, if they're not pronounced correctly, there's a bit of a gap there. So what happened was that this girl sat next to me and she started explaining like all the differences in the numbers. She was helping me out. And I found out that she was a teacher. And so I would bother her, although she was on holiday. I was still a kid, 13, 14 years old, very passionate about the language, very kind of into understanding everything. And I was like, can we do like 30 minutes a day when we sit at this very table when we first met? And you would give me some tips and stuff like that for learning the language. And she was like, yeah, of course. And yeah, we started this sort of correspondence. And the funny thing is that we kind of established this sort of relationship and we became friends. Now we're best friends. She lives yeah, it's crazy. She lives in Switzerland, in Zurich, and she's an English teacher. I think she's now the sort of director of the school or something like this. And yeah, and although we are apart and we haven't seen each other for like 5 years, then we are still best friends and we talk every day regularly, sometimes over the phone, sometimes video call and stuff like that. And she helped me go through a lot of certifications of English. So she guided me. She's a very pedantic person, right? So, well, yeah, very, very pedantic and very old school kind of education. And so, of course, when I was like, I don't know, cutting up words or, for instance, shortenings, abbreviations, she didn't like that. Or when I was like more American oriented, she was kind of putting me into the track of British English because I had several influences that were from America. Because from playing basketball, right? A lot of American people, I played with a lot of American dudes, and from all over America. I played with a center from Portland, I think. Yeah, it was Portland. And then another guy that played at Clemson University, but moved. Yeah, he's originally from London, but then he moved to America. So he had this sort of mix, right? And then I've done so many like English schools, campuses and stuff like that, and a lot of mixtures of accents and different pronunciations of any sort. And yeah, one of my best friends from America is a Californian guy, who I played with. So a melange of accents, really. So she kind of trying to put me in the right track, although I had a lot of influences. So that's one thing I like to clarify to people that deal with my character. Like, I didn't pick my accent. It was the natural result of my life. It was the natural result of my path, like what I went through. No accent is better than others. It's just that I went through these sort of process, and that led me to have like a more, let's call it, even if I don't like the expression, authentic, more native-like accent. But it's not like I decided to do that. Yeah, I had this obsession about like mastering and a native-like fluency so that I could kind of camouflage my accent and prank people that I wasn't Italian and stuff like that, because that's cool stuff to do, right? We all like it. But then when I started learning English from a sort of like scholarly perspective, and when I first got into English as a lingua franca and the concept of world Englishes, then my perspective changed. And I don't put a lot of importance to accent that I used to.
Yeah, man. I totally agree. I heard an interesting word that you said there. You said like, and I think you mentioned it in the roundtable. You said character, but you say it. Yeah. Say it again. Say it one more time.
Character.
Right. Like that's great, man. And yeah, I couldn't agree more with the accent thing. And for me, it's been really strange because I have obviously like a much more American accent. I grew up, I'm from Peru originally, but when I was 5 years old, we moved to the United States, and I was just put in a public school, and we lived there for 10 years, and my life was in English. So as a kid, you just pick up the accent, of course, all that stuff. And then once I moved to Spain, I went to an international school where we all spoke English, but it's like a Dutch guy speaking English, an Australian girl, a guy from Israel, so it just became this crazy mash of accents. And then I'll speak to someone from the UK and they'll say, oh, what part of the States are you from? And I go, oh, And then when I speak to an American person, they're like, whoa, what's happening here? Why is your English so good? But they don't think I'm from the US. So it's like this weird in between, and that international English that you're talking about, that world English,
Yeah.
I think it's just taking over, right? Because as it expands more, as people have more access to education, more access to English learning tools, more situations like yours, for example, which by
Yeah.
the way, that sounds like a movie. That's like an independent movie right
Oh
there.
my
Like
God. Yeah.
young kid
I'm
meets
telling you, when
older
I tell this
woman.
story, I'm like, oh my God, this is actually like weird. That's a weird stuff.
It's
Like
like a
that,
pitch.
that's
It's like an independent movie pitch, to a
yeah,
studio.
like faith. You had to go through this path, And it's curious that you mentioned that when you go to the States, like why your English is so good, but then maybe they sense that you're not a native. But
Mhm.
then when you go maybe to some other parts, they are like, oh, what part of the States are you from? And that's what happened to me as well in Cardiff, because I lived there for a year. I did my Erasmus year there. And some people were like, of course, it was still at the beginning. Some people were like, but where is it that you're from? I cannot understand what you're from, right?
They
Because
need they
you're
need they need to they need to put you in that box to understand you. They're like, wait, hold on. I need to know
yeah,
where to fit you into my brain.
yeah, exactly. But they were struggling to understand, although they maybe are like, but yeah, probably you're not from the UK, because of course, you know, at the beginning when I first got there, I didn't have this sort of cadency. Let's put it this way. But
Mhm.
then it just it just happened that I took it from there, and yeah. And in fact, what testified it is that now that I'm doing my internship in an English school in Verona, northern Italy. So a Green School Verona is a very good school of English. And one of my colleagues, she's from, I think, Southeast Midlands, which is like basically, I think, where the RP comes from, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken, the standard pronunciation. And she was like, "Whoa, your accent is pretty much like mine." And I was like, "Oh, thank you very much." So what I always tell people is, yeah, I had a lot of influences from abroad, from native speakers, but I already knew the language before I went to the UK. So you
Yeah.
don't have to necessarily go abroad in order to learn the language at a certain level. You can bring the language towards you. We are in the 21st century, and you have so many tools at your disposal that you can take chunks of informations and bring it to you instead of you necessarily going there. And so people, when they look at my curriculum or they look at my personal information, right, they are like, oh yeah, but you lived in the UK for a year. That
Right.
didn't change much. I mean, yeah, I learned some typical expression of the place. I learned how to pronounce a word like more accurately from their perspective, and I underline from their perspective. But it wasn't because of that I learned the language. It wasn't the year abroad. So for all those people that think that it's essential, I would just say it's a good, very, very good addition, like everything that you do in your life, but it's not necessarily essential for you to learn the language.
Yeah, man. I think I've heard that as well, and I think what people okay, hear me out. So
Yeah,
what people struggle with a lot of the time is like confidence when it comes to speaking, when it comes to production, actually like letting loose and just saying, you know what, here I go. I'm going to communicate. It's going to
yeah,
happen. Some people just don't care about making mistakes. Some people dive into it and they do that. I think when people talk about, oh, it's because you lived here for 2 years or you went here, they're kind of also talking about, oh, you forced yourself to be in this environment in which you
mm,
couldn't not speak. So you just like did like that immersion type, like you threw yourself in, you had like the foresight to say, hey, I'm going to go here because it's going to be good in general. It's going to be
yeah,
productive. And then they kind of, you dove in, and I think a lot of people struggle with that. And also to touch on what you said before, you
yeah,
were curious about the language. You were
yeah,
frustrated with it. You were curious. You had that natural thing of like, I don't know this and I want to know this. And I think
yeah,
that's the healthiest perspective, the healthiest advice you can give to someone is that curiosity that you feel. Don't attack it from the perspective of, oh, I need to improve my English because job in the
right.
world. No, just let that go and just be genuinely curious about the language. Just be genuinely curious. And then what you're saying, bring that to you. Whereas sports, whether it's music,
If
whether
you
it's
want, you
cooking,
can. If you want, you
exactly.
can, because you have all the tools for doing that. I
Hmm.
mean, you have to have some sort of inner motivations. That's what I always say. And a sort of inner motivation, an obsession almost
Yeah.
to the language. Yeah. Because if you don't have that, if you don't have the curiosity to discover the language, if you don't have the passion for the language, then of course you're not going to learn it. You got to visualize the objective in your mind, the goal that you want to reach. And then when you're about to give up, it almost sounds like a motivational speech, but it's not. I'm saying, you won that, you have to prove that you won that. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, I want to speak the language. I wish I spoke the language so well as you do, or so well, or at a certain level. And some people are, I wish I reached that level of fluency and stuff like that. You wish, you
Yeah.
can do
What
it.
is that?
Yeah, what is that? You go out there and you do it. If you don't do it, then it means that your motivation isn't strong enough for you to obtain that. You have
Hmm.
to want it. If you don't want it a lot, don't just say, I wish, because, life is yours, right?
Let me ask you something. What's your opinion about levels in English? This is a conversation that for some reason keeps coming up with students that I have and other teachers. And I always kind of call it like the illusion of levels, like
Yeah,
there are exams that you pass, you get a
yeah.
certificate, therefore that's your level, but
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to like language is so complex, you can be awesome at grammar and then terrible at actual communication. You can have, all the expressions, but you don't know how to conjugate verbs. You know a lot of vocabulary, but you could be lacking in other areas, right?
Yeah.
What's your opinion of like levels in general, how they're divided, if it's actually relevant to a certain
Yeah.
extent, and
You
stuff like
have
that?
this sort of, let's take the most well-known framework as an example, like the Common European Framework. What I'm talking about is basically A2, A1, B2, B1, C2, C1, whatever that
Mm-hmm.
is. So that's nonsense. In my opinion, that's absolute nonsense, because as you said, there are different skills.
Mm-hmm.
And although within that certifications, for example, let's take Cambridge certifications, right? Although within that certification, you have the percentage of what you scored for that particular skill, for instance, reading and use of English, grammar, vocabulary, and speaking and listening. How can you break it down so in such a simplistic way? Like, it's not just 4 skills, there is sub skills within that skills, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
you're good at listening but you're not at comprehending. You're good at the level of intelligibility, so you maybe understand each and every word that the speaker is saying, but then it doesn't make sense to you because it lacks vocabulary. And what is that, a problem of listening or a problem of vocabulary? Is a problem of understanding or comprehension? Like, how can you categorize it? So in my opinion, the goal shouldn't be to reach a level, but rather to reach successful communication, because that's language is about. And that's why I like that I like the methods that are more towards learning the language in order to speak, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to learn the language correctly. And then we could open another argument about this. Of course, it is important to learn the language correctly and everything, but what is it your priority? Are you a traveler? Are you going abroad and just want to communicate with other people? Then that's your goal, and your goal is to communicate. Don't bother about making mistakes too much. It will come naturally. By the time that you cultivate that passion that you have, you'll stop making mistakes. So don't worry too much about it. Are you an academic? Are you a scholar? Are you studying English at a certain level that you have to write things about it, and you have to literally make essays and theses and, papers, basically? Then you have to have a certain level of the language, because that's what academia requires, right? So it depends on your needs. That's the point of what I'm saying right now. You can't be like, oh, okay, I need this to enter this job, and I need this level. No, you should learn what you need for that job.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on the target that you have. How are you going to use the language? how are you going to use the language, why you're going to use the language. And then once you set the goals, then you understand what you want the language to be for you, and then you start learning the language. But without a clear goal, if your goal is to pass certifications, then we're going to go through that process because you need that. But if your goal is something else, like simply learning English, there's no point for me to go to some Cambridge or Trinity school and take a certification just for the sake of having a certifications. I don't need that, right?
Absolutely.
I can invest my money better. Like, yeah. I'm not discrediting those kind of institutions. I highly esteem them, but for a specific purpose, not for everything.
I mean, my listeners are probably sick of this metaphor or analogy, but I always compare it to going to the gym, for example. One day you say, hey, I want to be in shape. You're like, okay, but that means a lot of different things, like, are you going to go and are you preparing for a marathon? Then you better do some running. Do you want to get much stronger? Go lift weights. Which type of weight should I be lifting? Well, it depends. What are you doing? Are you an athlete? Are you a basketball player? Do you want explosive athleticism? Do you want to just get stronger, bigger muscles for vanity? So that every single approach requires a different focus, a different plan of action, and ultimately a different result, all within the fitness framework, just like the English one, So I always liken it to that. And just like if you sign up to the gym, that does nothing. You have to go every day and again prove that you want to change.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of that same analogy. But yeah, my listeners are, sorry guys, I always compare everything to the gym. You know that.
That's good.
I just think it's a good analogy,
It's a good analogy also because that's pretty accurate, because I go to the gym regularly, like 2 hours a day. And when I'm like traveling, for example, right now I'm in Milan for just, pleasure. And I would have this program of calisthenics, for instance, that I carry with me when I cannot go to the gym. So it's all about, finding ways of doing what you want to do and then combine all these things together. Of course, you're going to have different interests, but it depends on what you prioritize. So I go on holiday, right? But I bring my laptop. I'm on holiday right now, but I have my Jane Austen's book for writing my thesis, and I allocate those hours in for doing that. And then I allocate 2 hours for going to the gym. And then I allocate 1 hour for this lovely podcast, because, although I am traveling the world, because that's just a passion that I have, traveling around, move around. I'm an aquarium, Aquarius or aquarium. That's a zodiac sign. I don't remember.
Aquarius.
Aquarius. And I'm a bit inconstant, right? So I like to move around and stuff like that. But that doesn't stop me from my goals. So I bring the work with me, and then I keep working, although I want some pleasure time. So it's all about, I think, organization, first of all. And, you have your deadlines, you have your things that you have to do. And the pleasure of doing something else should not get you far away from your goals. You should always have those in mind and then have that aside. But if you organize properly, you can do everything. That's what I'm 100%.
saying. I mean, I struggle with the organizational aspect quite a bit. I mean, I've improved over the years, and I force myself to make lists, and I force myself to do these things that I know like don't come super naturally to me. I like creative things. I like art. I like exercise. I like sports. I like all these things. Organization isn't my strongest suit, but yeah, you force yourself to do it. And over time, it's not you forcing yourself. It's you actually just doing it. And it becomes a part of your day, a big part of your routine. So it's uncomfortable. A lot of things are uncomfortable, but once you get used to them, they don't just become not as uncomfortable, but they actually just become part of who you are, right? Whatever you do in your routine just starts to seep in through the pores and everything, and just becomes who you are. Let me ask you something. What was your exposure to English like in school? Because I mean, at least here in Spain, things are changing slowly, but there's always been this kind of archaic or old approach to English learning. Like, here are the verbs. This is how you conjugate these verbs. Here are some sentences with the verbs. Memorize these verbs. How do you think
Or what do you do? Let's say something that's different to that. How do you think we can amend that? And what was your experience with English at school?
Well, at school, as you mentioned, from elementary school up until high school, it was a little bit of a problem in the sense that maybe, as you said, there was this sort of teacher-centered approach and this kind of by heart learning approach that you have to memorize everything at once. And, you have this ridiculous list of irregular verbs and plurals and countable and uncountable nouns and all that stuff since the very beginning. Because, I'm talking about pretty basic stuff that falls under it's sad to talk about categories, but we're talking about, elementary or starters, basically, for those who start the language. But, it's not, in my opinion, that's not the way to do it. Unfortunately, and that connects with your previous question, that's one of the reasons why I started teaching English, which I didn't respond before, but I'm not now going to connect to, I haven't forgotten about that. So basically, I see the struggle of a lot of teachers to make the English language be loved, right? And, they just do their job, they get paid, and blah, blah, blah. Now, I don't want to go against the school in general, because it depends. I think it's a very individual thing, okay? There are a lot of teachers that I loved. I literally loved one teacher that I had in Trapani, my professoressa Bandiera. She was a very good teacher. She would do a lot of activities that would help you with breakdown songs and stuff like that. More of an interactive approach, more of a student-centered approach. That was very good. But there were other teachers that didn't share that passion for the language with me. And so, unfortunately, the vast majority of teachers all over Italy is following this kind of path. And it's not me that says that, but there's like a very important problem in Italy, because the general level of people that are not interested in the language, they're just relying on school, is no good. And you can see this difference from a lot of people that tell me, okay, I studied English on my own and then I'm very good at it. And then those people who didn't actually put the extra effort in, it as an extracurricular effort, then they didn't really master the language so well. And you can compare that with other countries that are instead very good. Take, for example, the Netherlands. We're talking about the Dutch English in the Netherlands. So something that developed in these recent years. I study in the Netherlands, so I know, right, that there is this sort of kind of variety of English that is emerging through the Netherlands, because they're so good at it, so that they cannot be considered, it cannot be considered a foreign language anymore. And there's also a lot of Scandinavian countries that are very good and have a very solid reputation in learning English, So there are those countries that through school only, they have the vast majority of the populations that speak English properly. And so by this comparison, I assume, and not without any kind of support or theoretical background and stats, that the situation in Italy is kind of problematic. And so what I'm trying to do with this social media stuff, both on Instagram and on TikTok, is I'm trying to make the language fun and help the level of English. And it's so satisfying when you go around, and that's why I also travel a lot, and you see people stopping you on the street and be like, oh, are you the guy that teaches English on TikTok? Yeah, maybe I have a weird nickname, right? I have a very weird nickname. So people are just like, are you the guy? But I don't care that they don't recognize my Bruscavic 08 name. I don't care about that. I care about that they come to me and they're like, oh, you're so useful. You're so useful to me. And that's very good. So I don't mind about popularity and bullshit like that, sorry for the for the word, but basically
We're
I like
free podcast here, bro. We say whatever you want.
Yeah. But I like when people come to me and be like, it's so useful for you to do these kind of videos. And I'm very good. And I see they're excited, both for seeing me and because maybe they're learning the language. And I receive messages of people that are, can I have your opinion on that? People rely on you. And that's very satisfying. from a professional or from a humanitarian perspective, that's very good, because that means that my mission of going all around and teach English, although slowly and gradually and with little tips, is actually improving the situation. And of course, by the time I grow and I have new initiatives, I'm trying to make this sort of thing stronger and stronger to kind of increase the level of English in Italy in general. I know it's ambitious, but that's what I'm trying to do, of course, with a lot of people that are trying to do the same. And that kind of seemed to work. So I'm taking the wave literally of that.
Mm-hmm.
And to go with that, I'm trying to do my part, albeit small, to do this. So yeah, there is something that needs to be improved in the educational system in Italy. I don't know what that is, but there needs to be something. And of course, that's individual. Okay, I'm not talking about all schools. I'm not talking about all institutions, and I'm not talking about all teachers. It's highly subjective as well, and it's highly individual. But there is a gap in Italy. There is a gap that needs to be filled, and that's a matter of fact, and you cannot deny it. Right?
Do you think it's changing? I mean, I'm sure it is. Again, obviously, no, it's just like a feeling and things that I've observed. But I feel like Italy and Spain are similar in this way. Do you think it's just changing also generationally, right? Like people in their 50s and 60s are less likely to have good English. Kids growing up now with all like the tools, being so connected, all that stuff, all the cliches, and like we're all so connected now, so exposed to the language. Like, and we, to the point where at least here in Spain, like younger generations adopt words that are just in English because of like the TikTok, social stuff, Instagram, just whole world. Like a great example. Yeah. A great example one is, right, the word cringe in English. Spanish kids would be like, que cringe. And you're like, whoa, you're like a 15-year-old who knows the word cringe, which is quite specific. But because Italian of the situation, you just...
Same use.
Yeah. It's like, no, they go, eso es un red flag. And you're like, what?
Okay.
Like, that's a deep expression, but again, popularized by social media. So I guess my question is, do you notice that generational gap? And also like a little adjacent question. Are movies, when you go to the movies in Italy, are they subtitled or are they dubbed to Italian? So like both of those things I want to know.
Neither or for the second question. I mean, there is nothing. There's just a film translated in Italian. Right. There's no subtitles, no dubs, nothing. There's just a film in Italian. You don't have anything underneath, no writings, nothing. Just translated.
Right.
What is the difference between dubs and subtitles?
So actually, subtitles are the subtitles, and dubbed, if something is dubbed, it is translated with the audio. So like what you're saying is, so all films are dubbed. Yeah. So you guys have movies that are just straight in Italian.
That's what I was trying to say. Okay, yeah, because
so no subtitles.
Okay, yeah, no subtitles whatsoever. They're just dubbed and translated into Italian. Basically, all the films are translated, and we are actually quite famous for our translator and our interpreters that do this kind of job. They're very good. They're very synchronized, and we have a good reputation for that. What about the first question? Come again, please.
The generational gap. Is that something you notice there in Italy as well?
Yeah, definitely. And I can have a very familiar example, in a very sense of the word, my brother. Okay, I've got a younger brother. We are 8 years apart. So you can imagine there's a bit of a difference there. But he knows English. He's very good at English, at understanding and at speaking it, and consequently, he's very good at school. So now that's the irony. He's good outside because he plays a lot of video games. He talks to other people in English, and he watches a lot of content on YouTube in English. And then he brings that knowledge into school, and he's very good at it. So it's almost like this generational change or swap or shift that you mentioned, right, is almost the other way around of what it was like in the 50s and in the 60s. Now, there is not that you are kind of implementing, at least I'm talking about Italy from my perspective, implementing that kind of knowledge from school to other mediums, right? Or media, yeah, to other medium like internet and stuff like that. But it's the other way around. People actually learn the language through internet, which is the thing that they most interact with. And then they bring it into school. So that's exactly what the revolution is. The shift is huge. And yeah, especially when the English at school is not taught like necessarily in an exhaustive way, then of course people take advantage of that, and their first source of English becomes the internet. Mm-hmm. Maybe in Scandinavian countries it's not going to be the same because they have hours and hours of English at school, and so that's going to be the predominant institution for that. But when it comes to other countries that maybe don't put that much effort in learning the language or in teaching the language, then where are people going to rely on? Internet, which is the main source. Because as you said, we live in a globalized world and everybody's connected. Everybody needs to communicate with everybody and understanding everybody. And that's something that I researched on as well. And it's very interesting, that the American English in general is while like the British, even though it's been kind of put side to side with American, is basically the language of the school now. These are the two varieties, but originally the British English was like the most kind of the language considered to be the superior language and blah blah blah, especially for schools and stuff like that. And so that's the language of institutions, but there's no debate on the fact that the American English is the language of the internet. That's the standard language of the internet, because internet is an American phenomenon, right? It comes from ARPANET, and then there's all that story of the military US that needed a sort of interconnections and blah, blah, blah. And so that's the story behind it. But the standard language is English. And so the vast majority of content is in English, and people who need to gather information, and that we're slave of information in the 21st century, need to have more access to information. And for doing that, what do I have to do? They have to learn English, because that's where the vast majority, that's basically the language of the vast majority of information is out there. And although we have translation tools and all of that, it's still not the same, because translation is relative. And a language system is different from another language system. Mm-hmm. And so the translation is never going to be perfect. So all of these factors come along perfectly and beautifully together as to explain why there is this sort of shift.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I joke around and say, but I find it to be absolutely true. I think I mentioned it in the roundtable we did, but if parents knew that one of the best things they could do for their kids is not to get a tutor to come and sit down and do the verbs with them, but hire someone to play video games with your kids for 2 hours in English, or go outside and play basketball for like an hour, and just be using this actual language, like using it for what it is, as opposed to like staring at a picture of it, So like just hire someone to play video games with your kids for an hour, go play whatever, Call of Duty, Fortnite, whatever you want to play. Yeah. Go do that stuff in English with someone where you have to communicate, you have to talk about what you're doing, you have to talk about what you're interested in. And that would be so successful. Man, I should start a language school that's just video games and like kids. That'll be the most fun. Like they would be so excited to go to class,
Yeah, there are theories behind it. Theories like teaching methods behind it.
Absolutely.
About like communication through games and stuff like that. There are legit theories behind it. And that's fascinating, because it's all about recasting, and it's all about asking, oh, please, can you say that again? It's all about mutual communications and mutual understanding. And recasting. So when you're talking to somebody, you need to communicate an information. So you got to put the effort in to understand the other person. And that's going to be like, oh, what'd you say? Come again. And then paraphrasing matches the recasting. And then you have to kind of try and learn new ways to communicate that thought that you have in mind.
I love asking students, what do you mean?
Yeah. And
Just
then they
that
have to
question.
concentrate.
Just
That question is powerful.
yeah. It's like blah 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 blah. Oh, what do you mean? Like, I know what you mean, but what do you mean? And then they have to. It's like when I'll ask a kid to explain. I'm like, hey, explain how to play this. Well, we'll play a board game, right? This was back in the day. I don't really teach like this anymore in class, in like physical classes. But I would have a game of Monopoly. We'll finish on this. I know I'm taking a bunch of your time already.
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. I'm having fun. Yeah, no worries.
So I'll say to one of the kids, all right, this is Monopoly. Have you played before? They're like, yeah, of course. I know Monopoly. I'm like, all right, can you explain it to the class? And they go, sure. And they just bail. They give up on the explanation. And then they start going, okay, so imagine you're here and then you land here, for example. I'm like, no. Don't give me a million different scenarios. Explain the game. So they have to say, Monopoly is a game in which the goal is to buy properties and make the other players go bankrupt via this method. Like, like an actual explanation.
Yeah.
As opposed to just, this example. So it's about not just using the shortcuts, but forcing like the brain to make new connections and to take new paths, especially when you're talking about children or young people in general, who's like the neuroplasticity is crazy, right? Like kids will learn through context, not because I gave them a list of verbs. I always say adults want rules and children just need context.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can say to study that context critically in order to categorize those information that they found there. That's something that I like. For example, I don't know, maybe in that context of maybe in that activity that we're talking about, let's say Monopoly, there are a lot of economic terms, I assume, right? And so you're going to be like, okay, now identify all of those economic verbs or vocabulary related and make a list of all those words that are belonging to the semantic field of economy or economics. Okay, just be like, make a list, and then you're going to have that categorizations that is going to portray what you have in your mind. And now the informations are stored and ordered in your mind properly, although you learned them inductively, if I'm not mistaken, that's the word. So basically from the context to up to the rule. And so that's how you basically learn the grammar and the vocabulary and all that boring stuff that would be bad to learn as if it was like a lesson when I tell you directly. Okay?
Yeah, just like if learning vocabulary in a vacuum is just irrelevant. Yeah. Even if I give you, here's a sentence from it. It's like, no. I need to know how to apply that to not just my life, but to my way of thinking, to everything. So I used to love teaching kids because it wouldn't be a grammar class. It would just be, hey, let's hang out for 2 hours, create an environment in which no one's speaking Spanish, in which we're just curious. We're talking about things like I've taught kids about the Industrial Revolution. What are we talking? And just because one kid didn't know what it was and the other kids couldn't explain it. So I'm like, okay, let's stop the class for a moment. Quick 15 minutes, 20 minutes about as much as what I remember from the Industrial Revolution from studying it. Or like, hey, like, can you explain taxes? Taxes came up one time. Like, can you explain that? No, let's just stop for a second and explain it. And then I like to think if you can't explain something to children, you don't really know it as well as you think you know it.
Yeah, exactly. Because they think to know it, but then they don't know how to express it. And then the thing is, that's another important question is why? Instead of just like, what do you mean is a powerful one, very powerful one, but like, why are you responding the way you are responding? What is the reason behind it? Like, I want a critical thinker in front of me that it's motivating his answer or her answer. You got to give me some context there, as you said. So yeah, we totally agree on that. We weren't so different after all. Yeah,
that's true, man. All right, well, dude, thanks for doing this. I appreciate it. I hope listeners, I'm sure you got a lot out of that. Before you go, tell everyone where they can find you, Instagram, TikTok, what your name is, all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm planning on changing it, but for now, guys, you can find me on TikTok, Instagram, the what do you call it? Like the kind of name tag or something. Yeah, my @ is Bruscavic08. I understand it's a bit weird. It's a BRUSCAVIC08. So that's the nickname. It's the same for both social medias. And That's all, guys. I hope you liked it. I hope you like listening to it. I hope I share something positive with you, because that was the main goal.
Absolutely, guys. Yeah, I'll put all his information and links in the description of the podcast, so check it out there. Highly recommend it. And all right, thanks, man. See you soon.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity. I appreciated it so much.
No worries, dude. Later.
All right, that was my conversation with Sam. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got something from it. Let me know if these conversation style episodes are useful. Let me know on Instagram, write to me, or whatever. I want to hear it from you, because this show has to keep changing just to be better and more enjoyable. So yeah, that said, let me know, and also suggest who you want me to have on next. I'll reach out and maybe we can get it done. All right, thanks for listening. Bye-bye.